Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo. I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to a Lakers Q&A. No agenda today, just want to be here and answer you guys' questions. I got about 40 to 45 minutes before I have to head or pack quickly and then head to the airport. So I will be wrapping hard out at like 3:30 Pacific time. And decided to go a little bit early here for all the times I've gone late that the chat likes to let me know about. But shout out to everybody in the chat. Britton says, early gang. Yes, this is early by our standards. Mo Love says, I guess nap time is over. Nap time never really started for me. I got like 7.5 hours of sleep, which is good for me, but I'm just a terrible sleeper. I wish I slept better. But shout out to Mo Love, Big Baby Sports, BC, Trey, Rolla, Anto, Isaiah, Brandon, Kevin Cambridge, Chris, I think I said BC, Jeff, B0, Justine, Darth Dan, Ryan Dagger, late night early crew. Achu, Tough, Gary, LT Life, Prolific, Cad, Mixtape King, Gary. I think I said Gary. Sam. All right, what up, everybody? Let's get into some questions. Let me know what you guys. I see Big Baby had the first one, I think. To my knowledge, Luka is playing tomorrow. Big Baby Sports asks, is Luka Doncic playing tomorrow? Yes, I believe so. The Lakers have not released their injury report yet for tomorrow's game, but to my knowledge, he is playing. I think it'd be pretty surprising. I think he just didn't play because of the back-to-back. Kevin Cambridge asks, I got to find out what your favorite song. I got to find out your favorite song of all time. Is that what you meant by that? I don't know what my favorite song is of all time. That's a really good question. I could say without a doubt, my favorite artist of all time is Drake, and I think you guys know that by now, those who have been following me for a while. I've stayed loyal throughout the Kendrick-Drake beef. It has been a rough year for Drake fans, but I don't know favorite song off the top of my head. I really have to think about it, but it would probably be a Drake song. Sam Davison, please tell me JJ knows Rui can't guard MPJ. We'll see. I don't know that he knows that because right before this, I just went back and watched the first half of the Lakers-Nuggets game back in November, and it was hilarious to go back and rewatch that game because the starting lineup was AD, LeBron, Rui, Cam, and AR. So you have two guys out of the starting lineup in AD and Cam being replaced with Jackson and Luka. But D'Lo is the sixth man. Max isn't playing as much. Dalton is playing a bit more. And there was at one point early in the first quarter where they went with 80 and four guards. They went with 80, Max, Dalton, Austin, and D'Lo. So a couple of those guys are at least a couple of them are minus defenders and guys who aren't really helping you on the glass. So the rotation, the identity has completely changed since then. Remember, that's the game. I didn't have time to watch the second half, but that's the game where LA gets blown out in the third quarter. I forget if they're up or I think they were up by a little bit or it was pretty close at halftime, and then they get blown out in the third quarter, end up losing by, I want to say like 27. But Rui was guarding MPJ to start that game. And one interesting thing that I will get into in terms of Jokic was I was really watching the possessions of how LA guarded him, and it was a mix of one-on-one with AD, which the Lakers no longer have that option defensively. But two, it was a lot of doubling from the top. So there was one possession where Rui gets switched. There's a MPJ, and they like to run a lot of second side actions with Jokic and MPJ together, especially empty side stuff, to really like, that's just, most teams can't necessarily switch that matchup. It's either a big switching on to MPJ, which is a mismatch, or a smaller player switching on to Jokic, which is a mismatch. So they switch it with Rui and AD, and Rui's guarding Jokic in the post, and AD immediately shifts down and leaves MPJ, and Austin replaces him and rotates over. So then Jokic can't make that pass to MPJ, and he then quickly pivots and drop steps and tries to fire a pass baseline, but it goes out of bounds. And in at least going through the first half film, and the Lakers could certainly change their strategy, and I wouldn't be surprised if they throw in a lot of different looks and ways they want to approach it, because Jackson is not AD defensively, obviously. Even though Jokic has still been able to get his against AD, like AD provides a certain level of resistance that Jackson, from a strength and like positioning and technique perspective, just can't match. But a lot of it was doubling from whoever was the closest, like doubling one pass away, which can be dangerous, but you have to really be careful that you have to double aggressively. And one thing that they really try to double, whenever he would look away from that player, the second he turns his head slightly, that's when that double would come. And then they're rotating over with the next closest defender to the top of the arc. Now, the one thing with Jokic in Denver, like they are used to different forms of double teams, different forms of coverages. So I think they'll be prepared for that. And if I'm picking that up on the film, I would assume Denver's film department is picking that up as well. So I'm sure Denver will have their form of counters, and they didn't have Aaron Gordon in that game. He'll be available on Saturday. They've been playing better. Jamal Murray has been playing. Of course, the Lakers are now getting Jamal Murray playing his best basketball of the season. He's coming off, he just had a career high 55 points, but he's had multiple 30-point games recently, and is starting to look more like the Jamal Murray of prior seasons. Julian Strother is playing well off the bench. And Denver's really hit their stride right now. They're playing their best basketball of the season. They've ascended to the number 2 spot in the West. So Lakers are catching Denver at arguably their peak in terms of like at least this group and this season. And that it's going to be a pretty big challenge on Saturday. So I suspect Denver will have their counters, and the Lakers will have to come with their counters and contingency plans to how they approach Jokic. But to me, the most effective way they were able to disrupt him was by doubling from the top the second he was looking toward the basket or trying to read the defense, and then shifting over. But again, like there's ways, like that guy, whoever's that guy that's one pass away, then needs to relocate and make that a tougher rotation for the Lakers defender. So I'm sure there will be ways. But the other thing is the guy who's the weak side guy, like there was one where they double him, and D'Lo's the weak side guy, and he's kind of stuck in no man's land between two guys on the weak side. I think it was Russ at the slot, and then Christian Brown in the corner. And Russ cuts, and D'Lo kind of shifts a little bit over toward Russ, but then that leaves the wide open baseline pass to Brown, and Jokic hits Christian Brown, and D'Lo can't rotate over there in time, and Christian Brown gets a wide open corner 3. So that guy, like that's probably the pass you have to focus on. Obviously, Russ cutting to the basket can be dangerous, but I think Austin was the next closest defender, and that was kind of more of his responsibility. So I think whoever's that baseline guy has to be really careful, because there's only so many like Lakers are kind of zoning up the non-double part. So you gotta take away that baseline pass, because Jokic is an expert at that. And that's kind of the easiest read in that situation, is just pivot and throw the pass to the baseline. And I think LA did a decent job overall, but that's something that they got to be careful with. Alexandre says, hi from Portugal. Big fan of you and the Lakers. Thank you. I appreciate that. Shout out to Portugal. Prolific 5, is converting the two-way guys still an option, or is there a deadline that's passed? It's still an option. The deadline is the last day of the regular season. So they actually have the remainder of the regular season. Gary Gutierrez, should we try Jemison on Jokic? I think he should. I assume you're saying JJ there. I would It's a good question. I don't mind it. I would have a quick hook though. Like one thing that the Lakers did in that first matchup was they tried to mirror 80s minutes to Jokic as much as possible. That's what Darvin did as well. I think that was the sound thing. Now between Jackson and Jemison or Jackson and Koloko, I think you could argue that on paper, both of those guys match up better with Jokic. Like Jemison's obviously got the strength and got the sturdy base to try to match up with him strength-wise. And then Koloko, I think, is a better overall rim protector, more disruptive in terms of blocking, altering shots than Jackson. And like when Jackson gets a run up, I think Jackson as like a chase down guy or in transition and stuff can be, and he's been better overall defensively. I just think Koloko is a more like traditional rim protector type than Jackson is. So in that sense, like I think you could actually argue that the Lakers' two backup options, and I'm not including Alex Lett in this, are potentially better equipped to match up with Jokic on like a one-on-one basis. So I would honestly try like potentially both and give each like a 2 to 3 minute shift and just see how it goes. But I think they need to have a quick shift, a quick hooked with each. My brain is all over the place. A quick hook with each shift, because one thing with Koloko was Koloko did not have a good shift against Jokic in that first quarter. He came in late in the first, and he was fronting Jokic. That led to Russ hitting Jokic with, just lobbing it over Koloko, and Jokic sealed him, got a layup. There was another time I think he scored over him in the post. So the Koloko minutes, like he might just be too green to match up with Jokic, and that's where Jemison might be the better option. But I also think Jemison, he's strong, but he's also a little bit on the shorter side. Like I think he's more like 6'9" than maybe 6'10" at tops. And Jokic is a legit 6'11", 7 feet. So I think I'm interested to see how the strength battle goes with those two. Cause like Jemison looks stronger, but I think I would assume Jokic weighs more and might be a little bit stronger. I think it's probably close, but Jokic is definitely taller, and with his high release, like I think he might just be able to shoot over Jemison and kind of leverage his length and size in that regard. So we'll see, but I would assume they're going to have to play Jemison or Koloko. Again, I think Koloko to me has been the better defender around the rim overall, but he might, like, this might just be, there's going to be a chess match out there, and I don't know if Koloko is quite ready for that. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jemison gets the nod. Joe asks, are the Lakers confident in Luka's health going forward? Yes, they are. The plan, to my knowledge, moving forward is going to be like, JJ said it last night, that they're hoping that he'll be able to play on back-to-backs from this point on. The Lakers have 7 more back-to-backs, so I don't think that's something that they're really concerned about. They're just trying to be cautious with it. Like, he missed 22 straight games. He missed 6 weeks. It was the longest injury-related absence of his career. So I think they're just trying to be smart about like how they manage him. Couple super chats. First one from Mamadou. Thank you for the super chat. Can we put DFS on Joker, and who's guarding Murray? Because if Austin is defending him, he won't be able to give us anything on offense. 2 good questions there. I think if the Lakers put DFS, I think we will see some DFS on Joker. I think they will mix things up. Of note, in the first half of that first matchup, and I was looking more at the first half because, 1, I just ran out of time, but 2, I also think that was the more competitive portion of the game. They got absolutely ran off the floor in the third quarter, so I wanted to see like what kind of worked for the Lakers. What were they trying to do in that first half? And they did primarily go big on Jokic. It was mainly AD and Koloko, and there was a little bit in the first quarter, and that's when we saw a shift more to the doubling in terms of Rui guarding him, and then AD being a roamer and helper and doubling him that way. So maybe we see Rui take on that matchup and have Jackson help, but then that puts a lot on LeBron, because LeBron is then probably on MPJ. Because if you're helping, like in that case, if you're helping, it's got to be Aaron Gordon or like Peyton Watson is the guy that Jackson's on, and then he's helping off that person. But then that either I mean, that probably puts LeBron on MPJ, and then that also puts like Austin or Luka having to battle Aaron Gordon or Peyton Watson on the offensive glass, and both of those guys are good offensive rebounders. Peyton Watson, more of a pogo stick, or, above the rim athletic type. Aaron Gordon can also do that, but he's 6'10", 260 pounds. So that's a tough matchup for. Like I'm a little bit more comfortable with Luka being in there because Luka is a good defensive rebounder and he's big, but he's not as big as Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon's just bigger and stronger, and that I think that could be a tough defensive, assignment in terms of guarding his man in help, and then also having to shift over, rotate over, and box out Gordon. But that's just what it's going to take to beat Denver. So I would assume we will see some DFS and LA going a little bit smaller and doubling and having to rotate and scramble out of that. So I would not be surprised if that is a look we see tonight or tomorrow night. And then who's guarding Murray? I think it's going to be Austin. Especially with the starting group, I would assume the matchups are so Denver starts Jokic, Gordon, MPJ, Christian Brown, and Jamal Murray. So I would assume LA does their normal starters, and they probably start. It's probably going to be Hayes on Jokic, LeBron on Gordon, Rui on MPJ, Luka on Brown, and Austin on Jamal Murray. That's how I would assume they start, and then I assume there will be some doubling, probably LeBron doubling on Jokic off of Gordon, and then everyone else having to rotate and shift. And again, that will, like, if it's Rui or Luka, I guess you're probably okay against Gordon to some extent. But if it's Austin, and even if it's Rui or Luka, like, I would not be surprised if Gordon is living on those baseline cuts from the dunker spot or offense rebounds or setting some pin in flares for guys on the weak side. So it'll be interesting to see how LA match. Like, they don't have great matchups for Denver on the defensive side. At the same time, I don't think Denver has great matchups for them because I assume Gordon will probably guard LeBron, but then that's putting Christian Brown on Luka, and I know Luka does not look like Luka yet, but if he does, that's not a good matchup for Denver. So I think Luka is. It's funny to call him an X factor when he's such an important part of this team, but I think Luka's kind of the X factor of this matchup where I just don't think they have a great, like, maybe Peyton Watson with his length can come in and bother him a little bit, but I don't think they have a good Luka matchup defensively. And even with LeBron, I think Aaron Gordon defends him like reasonably well, but LeBron is still going to be LeBron. So I think it almost comes down to like who can exploit the other team more defensively. And in general, I think the Lakers have more defensive talent than Denver. But I think you could also flip it and say, like, Denver's starting group has played together 4 of the 5 guys have won a championship together and started and been one of the best lineups in the league over the last few years. Then Christian Brown has been someone they've been grooming to take that KCP role, and he's been playing well overall this season as like a two-way, 3-and-D guy. So Denver's starting lineup is really, really good. It's going to be a tough matchup for the Lakers, and but I do expect DFS on Jokic, at least them to try it. I don't know if it'll be effective, and I do think Austin is going to have to take on the Murray matchup. Next one, actually, we'll go here. Next one from Juice the Show. Thank you for the super chat. Do you think Luka is better than Joner and basically Denver? I think right now, I think Denver's better, and I think the way that Jokic and Murray are playing, I would take, like, I think, just to be straight up, like, I think Denver's probably going to win on Saturday night. Like, this is by far, like, if we're just looking at it, like, the Lakers with Luka, they played Utah twice and Charlotte. Denver is like a significant step up in competition. They are the number 2 seed in the West right now. As I said, they're playing their best basketball of the season. And I mean, right now, you could probably make a case for them as high as like number 4 in the NBA, maybe even number 3. Like, I think them versus Cleveland is a real conversation. So Denver is, and plus you factor in like road trip, altitude, all those factors. Like, it's going to be a tough matchup for the Lakers on Saturday. However, I think Luka and LeBron long term, I think, is a better duo than Jokic and Murray. I think if that's what you're getting at here with this question, and by long term, I mean like, 15, 20 games down the road. I think those guys need some time to develop their chemistry. We haven't really seen a lot of two-man game between LeBron and Luka yet. So I think that's something that the Lakers can still work on unlocking. But Luka, I think, will be better longer term. And this is like, I think this is always going to be a tough matchup for the Lakers just because of the front court and how big and physical they are. They start three guys 6'10" or bigger, two really good offensive rebounders in Jokic and Gordon, but also like Michael Porter Jr. becomes an all-star against the Lakers for some reason with both his shooting, his offensive rebounding, his cutting. Like the Lakers have just really struggled guarding MPJ. And then you factor in Jamal Murray, who becomes like the second coming of like Steph Curry and Kyrie Irving mixed together against the Lakers with his pick and roll play and his off the dribble shooting and pull up shooting. So it's like, it really, it's like if MPJ and Jamal Murray continue to play the way that they play against the Lakers, then I do lean Denver in this matchup. If those guys stabilize to more of their normal play, I think the Lakers have a real shot to beat Denver this year. DJ, do you agree with, thank you for the super chat. Do you agree with Nick Wright that he thinks Luka is sad? I do agree with Nick Wright to an extent. I don't fully agree with him in that, like, I don't chalk up everything. Like, and I only heard a social snippet of what he said, so I don't want to just assume I know what he's saying. But I did see that him saying he thinks Luka is devastated and has had his confidence shaken a little bit. I don't know if I'd go that far with the confidence part, but I do think there's an emotional undercurrent here of Luka being sad and shocked by this whole situation. And I know there's some conspiracy theories as to like how much LeBron and AD really knew or how much Clutch really knew. I don't think Luka knew. I think like that is something that I'm confident in. I think if Luka knew, there would have been an attempt to, and this is pure speculation, so please don't aggregate me, but I think there would have been an attempt to undermine the trade and like leak it or stay in Dallas. Like I think he wanted to stay in Dallas. I don't think he wanted to leave. So, and remember, even if there was some uncertainty about his long-term future in Dallas, getting traded cost him $100 million. So like we can't overlook that either. I think there's an element of him being the franchise guy and being in Dallas and that being his only experience in America is like being in Dallas, being beloved by that fan base and being treated as the franchise guy. Then you also lose $100 million. Like that, just, I don't think we need to overcomplicate or like overthink it. Like, of course you're going to be upset and sad and like be affected by that. I don't think it's shaken his confidence. I think the biggest thing is like, he's just missed so much time. And I don't think between his calf and still recovering and getting his legs back under him, plus the conditioning and like, I think he's out of shape right now, but I think it's more due to the injury and how much time he missed rather than Dallas trying to throw dirt on his work ethic or whatever. So I think I attribute it, the on-court struggles more to the time off, recovering from an injury, being out of game shape, and also adjusting to new offense, new system, new coaching staff, new teammates. Like I think Luka, I made this point before, but it's not like, it's one thing to plug and play a DFS. DFS just has to go out there offensively, spot up, run to the corner, set some screens, move the ball. It's almost like pickup style basketball for DFS offensively. Defensively, it's just guard the best wing player and switch. And those are all things that like he excels at. Those are all really easy adjustments. Like DFS is a plug and play player that you acquire in a trade. Luka is a franchise player. He is used to being the entire offense in Dallas, basically from the moment he entered the NBA. So that's a much bigger adjustment because the way that Luka plays does not necessarily align with the way JJ wants to play or the way that LeBron wants to play. So there's been a big adjustment there. And I think they're trying to figure out the optimal way to use him, the optimal way to keep everybody happy. And that's just a process. And that takes some time. So I think that, to me, the combination of like being shocked by the trade, losing out on all that money, and also adjusting and being out after so long, like that to me is more the reason why he struggled. But I agree. I think there is an element of him being sad, and I think that shouldn't be overlooked in all of this. Juice the Show, thank you again for the super chat. What is our real ceiling on defense in your eyes? I think the Lakers can be a top 10 defense. What's funny is I was looking at it, the last 4 games, which I guess I consider the Luka era because it's since he started playing, even though he only played in 3 of them. Lakers are 20th in offense, 9th in defense, and 11th in net rating. So even with Luka, and granted, it's not been the best competition between Utah twice, Charlotte once, and Portland. They've still been a top 10 defense. They've been the number 1 defense in the league over the past 17 games. A big portion of that was with Max and AD. I do think they're going to regress as a defense overall over the next, weeks or a couple months. Real ceiling on defense, I think they can be like the 7th to 9th defense, probably on the high side. I think though anything above average is going to be a win for this group, just based on like I think AD and Max were 2 of their 3 or 4 best defender. Like AD was obviously their best defender, but then Max, like Vando, I think is a better defender than Max, but Vando is playing like 14 to 18 minutes a night right now, maybe 20. Max was playing like 35 minutes a night. So from like a value perspective, sure, you might be getting 15 great defensive minutes out of Vando and 35 good defensive minutes out of Max, but that 20-minute swing or whatever, 15 to 20-minute swing, that matters in terms of value and how your defense is functioning. So I think basically replacing Max with Luka, of course, from a talent and offensive perspective, huge jump. But defensively, that's a huge downgrade at the same time. And really the only thing is like you get a bit bigger, you probably get better from a defensive rebounding perspective. But from a like Max was the Lakers' point of attack defender. They don't have that guy anymore. So I think losing Max and losing AD are 2 big defensive losses that the Lakers can overcome to some extent. But I do think like they were looking like a team that was almost a lock to be in the top 10 defensively and maybe even pushing top 5 with how they were previously playing. I think, especially with this upcoming schedule and just this brutal stretch of back-to-backs, top 10 teams, top 10 teams, top 10 teams, I think they're probably going to stabilize closer to being a league average defense. But if they could be anywhere in like that 10 to 12 range, I think that's a win. And ceiling wise, I think like 7 or 8 is the ceiling, but I think a lot has to go right. And I see them more in like that probably 10 to 12 range if I had to pick right now. Ali, any new potential buyout candidates? Larry Nance, thank you for the super chat. Larry Nance is out for about 6 weeks, so I don't think he is the right guy. I mean, that basically takes him out until early to mid-April. I think that's just too late to try and implement a guy like that. I have not heard of any potential buyout markets. It's buyout guys. It's been a pretty quiet buyout market for now, but if I hear of any names, I will report it and I will share it with you guys. Mamadou, thank you for the super chat. I know we haven't had success against Denver, but this is a very different Lakers team. Yes, this is a very different Lakers team, and that's why I'm like, this is probably the most excited, off the top of my head, this is the most excited I've been for a regular season game at this point in the season, just from like this has been the big bully against the Lakers, right? Like they've dominated the Lakers the last 2 years. They've eliminated them from the postseason the last 2 postseasons, and they've had this unsolvable problem of offensively the Jokic, Murray, MPJ trio, and defensively, I think the Lakers have actually had a lot of success against their defense and largely been able to do what they've wanted, but the legs, because of the defensive ask for the Lakers, the offensive end has sometimes not been there, and it's been a lot of like LeBron, AD, and Austin succeed, and then D'Lo don't need to rehash that, but had two really rough series against Denver. Rui was abysmal against the Nuggets in the first round. I think how bad D'Lo was let Rui off the hook a little bit as to how bad he was. Then Vando wasn't available last postseason, and he got played off the floor in the first series. So I'm just interested to see like how the Lakers match up with them. As I said, Denver is playing well. They have a lot of momentum. They're playing some of their best basketball of the season, if not their best basketball of the season. So I think it's a good litmus test. It's a good barometer. It's a good measuring stick for where the Lakers are at right now. It's their first good team that they've played in the Luka era, like with Luka. And it's going to be a real challenge defensively for them. And at the same time, it's going to be the first time we actually see what they look like against a good team offensively. And like how do they try to attack Jokic and Murray defensively, and how like can they match fire with fire? Like does Luka change the dynamic now where they can go shot for shot and match fire with fire offensively? I think they can. I don't know if we're going to see that in the first game. Remember, they play Denver 3 times over the next month, so I think it's going to be fun to kind of like track the progress of how they match up with Denver. But this first one, I think it's a marquee matchup. It's a Saturday night game in Denver. I believe it's ESPN, like nationally televised game. So it's going to be a big one. X, thank you for the super chat. Luka needs the rock if we want to make this work. I agree. The tricky thing has been that, and we saw it last night against Portland, like LeBron is just playing at such an insane level right now. He's playing some of his best basketball of the season. He's really been playing his best basketball of the season for like the past almost 2 months now. So it's tough to like take the ball out of that guy's hands. But longer term, I think the best version of this team is going to be Luka as the primary ball handler, or at least co-piloting it more. And I think we've seen that. Like, I think there's this notion that like Luka has just been an off-ball guy when that's just not true. But I think they need to find a better balance, and I think Luka, like, they need to find a way to make him a little bit more comfortable. And part of that just takes time. It's reps, it's experience, but part of that is also, I think, putting the ball more in his hands and letting him run the show a bit more, and not necessarily having him come off screens with some of the actions that they've done. So we'll see. But I agree in general. I think they need to gear things a little bit more toward Luka. I'm going to take a quick water break. Then we got a super chat from Flash Hawk. Super chat from Flash Hawk. Thank you. Would you ever consider calling in on Lakers Nation playback during halftime? It would be cool to get your insight on the vibes of the players. I had not thought of that. I do have a pretty quick halftime window. It's typically less than 15 minutes, but it might be something worth talking to Trevor about and seeing if that would be something that you guys would enjoy and I could do. So yeah, I'm like, I think in the future, games I don't travel to, maybe I will do like create a playback account or something like that for those situations. And I think that would be something fun to do during games. But obviously that would be me at home or at a hotel rather than being at the arena. But yeah, I mean, that's certainly something I could talk to Trevor about. Chris, thank you for the super chat. I'll be at the game Tuesday, hoping and expecting Luka to go nuclear. I just can't fathom him and the team not pushing him to take over. So Chris is referencing the Dallas game on Tuesday in LA. That one's going to be a fascinating one just because it's the first matchup between Luka and Dallas. There's no AD. The game's in LA, so it takes a little bit of the steam of the narrative out. The big one will be the one in Dallas. I believe it's April 5th. That's a huge game. I think it's second or third, like last game of the regular season for LA, and it's Luka returning to Dallas. AD should be back by then. So a lot of emotions. But yeah, Tuesday's game is a big one. It's big for standings purposes. I think Luka will have a huge game. And I think the team is going to put, like, if the Luka breakout doesn't come against Denver on Saturday, I think it'll come against Dallas on Tuesday, and he's going to be locked in for that one. But that's a good game to go to. You picked a good one. All right, just so you guys know, I have a hard out in 12 minutes. I have to pack and go to the airport. So Kevin Cambridge says, Jovan, if you could hop on in Lakers Nation postgame show with Trev on a night that you don't attend, that would be so tough, even if you only pop in for like 15, 20 minutes. I'll reach out and let him know that this is what the people want. Julian Letta, guys, do you think Luka will be a Laker forever? I'll say yeah, but it is tough with just the player movement that we've seen now, of like how many guys, like once you get traded that one time, you end up getting traded or signing elsewhere a lot. But at the same time, I think Luka, I mean, he said it in his intro press conference, like loyalty is a big thing for him. And I think if the Lakers are loyal to him and offer him as much money as they could offer and try to build the best roster possible, like I don't see why he would want to leave. And he's said it's the greatest franchise in sports. So I think they're off to a pretty good start. Kevin Cambridge also says Max revenge game incoming. I do think we are going to see a Max revenge game. Now, I don't know if it's going to lead to I think Lakers still win the game, but I think Max is going to have a big game. RV14, 12 minutes equals 1 hour. Normally, yes, but I will literally miss my flight, so I can't do that. L.A. Jovan, what was your career game in high school? Did you ever? So I've talked about, like, I was certainly more of a role player than anything, but there was one game against Simi Valley where I had 6 blocks. And so for me, it was always about like the defensive side, but we were mixing in some zone and some man, and like 2-3 zone, I would be the guy in the middle. So that game, I want to say I had like, I probably only had like 6-8 points, but I want to say like 9 rebounds and 6 blocks and a few assists. So that to me was like the game I take the most pride in, because that was my career high in blocks. And like I was mainly out there for defense, rebounding, occasionally post ups or spacing the floor out. At that time, I didn't really have 3-point range. That was more a post high school thing I developed. But yeah, I was never a big scorer, to be completely honest. But I was out there for blocks, for fouls, for getting into people's heads. Madison says, Jovan, prediction for tomorrow's game. I say we lose by a buzzer beater or win by 15. I think it'll be a close game, but if I had to pick, I would say like Nuggets by 6, something like that. I think it's like a close game where maybe Lakers miss a shot to tie it, then they got a foul or something, and then they kind of play the foul game at the end, and it ends up being like a 6-point loss. But I think, again, like I'm not. They're a team still forming their identity and finding themselves versus a team that's like pretty much fully formed and rolling right now. So I don't. Again, I do think there's like a measuring stick litmus test element to tomorrow's game, but I also don't want to overreact. Like you guys know, I think at this point, I try not to overreact and keep the big picture. And I think if it's a competitive game, that like, I want to see a better version of Luka, and I think that's, from an offensive perspective, ideally the thing from the Lakers side, and then also how they match up with Denver's front court and defend them. But tomorrow is going to be a tough game. Hamza Hussein, Jovan, let me intern for you, man. Send me an email at jbuha@theathletic. Michael Slaughter, am I crazy, or did Lakers National used to be Get Garnett? I think you mean Lakers Nation. Yes, I believe it was. Neil, hey Jovan, I'm of the idea that Hayes should play at least 24 minutes per game. Do you think he doesn't play 30 because he plays at such a frantic pace and can't keep it up 100% for long minutes? I'm with you. Like I've said, I think Jackson probably like a range of 22 to 28 minutes, depending on the matchup, depending on how he's playing. But like 24 is obviously in the middle of that range. I think Jackson's been playing like it's weird. Like Jackson is a guy who's really testing my priors, and like he's just a guy who he's improved a lot this season. And I thought what was a bit up and down to start the season, and then was starting to I thought play better, and then got injured, and then missed. I mean, remember he missed like basically a month. He wasn't available for that Denver game. Like he missed essentially like a month and a half, and then came back, and I don't think was playing well. And then all of a sudden, the past like month and a half now, I mean, we're so far to the season, he's been playing really well. He's been rebounding better, defending the rim better. I still think there are some limitations there as a rim protector and a rebounder. There are some limitations offensively in the sense of like he's still a guy who has to almost always be more of a finisher than a creator. And like he has to be spoon-fed lobs, dump passes in transition. But he's been really good, especially for his contract, his role, like his projected role in his contract. He's completely outseeded that, out exceeded expectations. Excuse me. I'm still, I'm gonna go to sleep tonight really early. 30 minutes. I think that's probably the high end for him. The thing is with Jackson, I don't really see a drop off the more he plays. I feel like he kind of plays with the same energy and the same effectiveness, whether he plays like 12 minutes or 20 minutes or 25 minutes. So I think it's more of a matchup thing where JJ just likes to play small a certain amount, and maybe they're trying to preserve some of that energy from Jackson. But I think he could play 30 minutes depending on the matchup. But I think it is more just JJ likes playing smaller. Darth Dan, is the Walker Kessler trade off the table now? I mean, obviously off the table for the rest of the season. I think it's probably off the table for at least this offseason cycle, because I think they just want 2 first-round picks, and the Lakers don't have 2 first-round picks to trade. So, yeah. John said, do you have a team that helps you write for The Athletic? No, I write. I mean, like I have editors, but I write everything myself. L.A. Jovan, does Luka need a whole offseason to get totally right? Probably to get like totally right, yes. But I think like right before he got injured, he was playing really well. So yes, this is something he's going to have to monitor and manage. And like maybe he doesn't get quite back to the level he was at pre-injury, but I think there's still like even 80% of what he was and like the current version, there's a sizable gap there. And I think he could get at least to like probably 85% of what he was. So I'm not concerned with Luka. Again, if we're having this conversation 2-3 weeks from now, I will have a different tune. Neil, Jovan, do you play in an adult basketball league? Any recommendations on a league to join? Well, it depends. Are you in LA or not? So I don't have the schedule availability to play in an adult basketball league. Like I can't say Tuesday at 6 p.m. I'm going to play. I'm available. Like Lakers sometimes play on Tuesdays at home, at which point I have to be at the arena 4:45, 5. They also sometimes are on the road for like maybe they're playing Wednesday, but I got to be in Denver or I got to be in Portland or Phoenix or wherever. So then I won't be available. So unfortunately, one of the tough things with the job is like extracurricular activities. I just don't have like a consistent weekly schedule. So I can't say Tuesday at 6 I'm available. But any recommendations? If you're in the LA area, there's the Culver City League, which I used to play in, which I like. There's also a Beverly Hills League, which I played in. I can play in the summer, a more regimented schedule. But I think the Culver City one's like All City or something like that. And then I don't remember the name of the Beverly Hills one. That was more of one I just joined last second. Michael D, thank you for the super chat. Is Jordan still the most revered basketball figure globally, or has LeBron reached an equal/superior tier? Also sucks what happened to Wemby. Well, this is a conversation for probably a different time, but I will try to answer it as succinctly as I can. I still think it's Jordan. Now, I will preface it because this is like this becomes almost political. I, for the record, think LeBron is the GOAT, but I think they've done like polls and stuff of asking people who they think is the GOAT, and I still think it's probably like 55-45 favor Jordan, somewhere in that range. I still think it's more than 50% of people would still pick Jordan. But the global question or the global part of this is interesting because I probably can't speak to. I think you'd probably have to poll like a more global audience, and that's just insight I don't necessarily have. But I think LeBron is like there. I think it's close to equal, but I still think most people would, or a majority, more than 50% would say Jordan. And yeah, it really sucks what happened to Wemby. I hope he recovers. Like, he's on that trajectory of an all-time player. We've just never seen a guy that could do what he does at that size. He's taller than 7'3". Like the 7'3" thing, I'm like, Rudy Gobert is listed at 7'2", or maybe he got downgraded to 7'1". He's more than 2 inches taller than Rudy Gobert. It's like a good 4 inches. So he's like at least 7'5", if not 7'6". So to see a guy that mobile at that size, it's like if Kevin Durant and Yao Ming had a baby. That's crazy. Chris, I guess I missed one of your super chats earlier. Had a real question. Are we delusional to think a Claxton trade this summer? The fit, age, and contract are absolutely incredible. I wouldn't say delusional, but the price is going to be high. I think it's going to be similar to a Mark Williams price of a pick, a swap, Dalton, something like that, maybe even a little bit more. And that also depends on like how the rest of Dalton's season goes. And like Dalton has clearly lost trade value from like now to where he was in like November, right? So that's a factor here. But yeah, I really like Claxton. I think even like his defensive metrics are really good. And I think people a couple years ago, maybe you could argue that he was a little too skinny or slight to kind of, but like his post defense rates out really well. His rim protection obviously rates out well. He's versatile defensively. I think Luka would maximize him as a rim runner, roll threat. So and he's also on a descending contract. So if the Lakers can get Claxton, I would get Claxton 100%. Like I think that's a no-brainer. All right, I'm at the 3:31 mark, so I'm going to wrap here. I'll answer this one from Lakers media member. It says LeBron should guard Jamal Murray and Luka should guard Jokic. That's an interesting one. I've talked about last year. My theory was LeBron guard Murray, AD guard Jokic, and you just switch the two-man game every time because those were the only two guys that could guard both credibly. I don't like the idea of Luka switching on to Jamal Murray. I think he's just too quick for him. So you have to figure out that. But Luka on Jokic, I guess it depends who else is out there. I maybe like that more in like a small ball look. But you kind of just need a guy to help funnel him into the help and then just hope that you can help aggressively enough and rotate and scramble out of that. So I don't hate it. I would still, if I was ranking guys to put on Jokic, if I'm putting a non-center, I'd probably go DFS, LeBron, and even Rui ahead of Luka. I would maybe prefer Luka over Vando, though. I like Vando more as a helper against Jokic, either as the doubler or as the guy zoning up and rotating and scrambling. I think he doesn't have the strength to guard Jokic, whereas Luka's a bit bigger and stronger in that regard. So it's interesting. I'm sure with how much the Lakers switch, we will see some possessions of Luka on Jokic, and then we'll see how he holds up. But I don't like. It's not an outright no from me. And LeBron on Murray, I think we've seen a little bit at times, and it does allow you to switch the Murray Jokic pick and roll pretty seamlessly, as I see some chaos ensue on the streets of Portland here. But I have to wrap here. I do have to go to the airport and not miss my flight. So I can be in Denver to watch the Lakers play the Nuggets tomorrow night. But that will do it for today's Q&A. I appreciate you all so much for tuning in for a midday stream on the Pacific Coast here. For some of you, obviously, I know it's nighttime, late, early, wherever you are, it's 11 p.m. somewhere. So shout out to the late night gang today. It's a little bit more of the early gang, but thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow night after Lakers Nuggets. We will have the litmus test, the barometer, the measuring stick of how do the Lakers stack up with the Denver Nuggets, who I think are their second biggest competition in the West right now, behind the Oklahoma City Thunder. Arguably, it might be their worst matchup, but maybe that changes. Maybe it's different now with Luka. We will see tomorrow. But shout out to everyone in the chat. I appreciate you all, and I will talk to you all very soon.